He was funny, smart, outgoing, had to get the last word type of kid. You know, he didn't take anything serious. You know, I was always serious. He just let everything roll off his shoulders. You know, he was finding his way in life. He had, you know, he didn't know what he was going to do with himself yet. He had hit a point. I didn't like worry about him and things like that. But he loved video games, anime, movies, music, you know. I think like a typical 22-year-old.
Okay. And while he was trying to find his way, did he ever throw out, hey, I think I might want to do this or go down this path? Or was he, no, I'm just going to figure it out?
He literally has just moved out on his own. He's got a good opportunity in a small little apartment. It was super cheap, and he really didn't know what he was going to do yet. He just, honestly, he was hanging out. That's what he was doing. He was hanging out. I mean,
22-year-olds.
Yes, unfortunately,
52-years who are still just figuring it out.
I mean, he was just, you know, he didn't bother nobody. He had lots of friends, and sometimes, you know, he didn't judge anybody. You know, I was a judger. You know, they're bad. Don't, you know, he wasn't like that.
Okay. Describe him in one word.
Great. It was my everything.
And if he was describing you with one word, what would that be?
No, I don't know. I mean, he was a mama's boy, so I don't know what he would have, I don't know. I think he would say I was his everything, honestly.
And these years that have passed, describe yourself now with these years past in one word.
Broken.
So as much as you care to share, or as little, tell us about that day.
It was a Tuesday. Actually, I mean, I'll go back a couple days. A couple days early, my son had a girlfriend he had been with a couple years. Him and his girlfriend had broke up. And November 7th, I saw a picture of my son on Facebook with a girl that didn't have a very good reputation. So, you know, not mother or me. It was getting close to the holidays. He would give me $150 a week for his rent, and then I would write him a rent check at the end of the month, and I would pay his electricity. Well, November 8th, I went to my son's apartment, and he came down to get the rent check, and I wasn't real nice to him. I basically said what I had to say about him hanging out with this girl, whatever, and he got upset and he walked away. And it was dark, so I don't remember what his face looked like that day or anything. So he got upstairs and he sent me a text message, and, you know, we went back and forth with text messages. And by the end of it, we had kind of come to a common ground on how I felt. Well, then I realized he had dropped his rent check in my car. Well, he needed it for the next morning. So the following morning was November 9th. And I just had this very uneasy feeling. He's hanging out with this girl. I knew she was bad news. So I left the house a few minutes early so we could go take his rent check. So my 12-year-old, we got there, he got out, he took the rent check up to Josh, and Josh said, I love you. He said, you know, whatever. He got in the car, and we went about our day. That night, I was literally behind my son's house at my other son's house, and I was just so mad and venting about how mad I was, hanging out with this girl, you know, thought she was bad news, whatever. I can't explain what was going on inside of me. Like, it was like a mother's intuition, like just something. So the next morning, my husband got up, and it was November 10th at this point. My husband got up that morning to go to a military graduation, him and my 12-year-old. He'd taken my son with him. He thought it'd be a positive thing for him to experience. So they got up that morning to go to Georgia. 7:30 in the morning on the way to work, I called my best friend, and I was like venting about Josh. He's hanging out with this girl, and I couldn't explain this feeling. And maybe it was just coincidental, but I'm just telling you, something inside me when I saw that picture just, well, I was at work and it was 10:14 in the morning, and I had 3 missed calls from my 20-year-old, which that was not a normal time for him to call me. So I answered the phone. Well, I call him back, and he's like, Mom, Josh just got shot. I was at work, you know, so of course I lost a coworker, you know, took me to the hospital. I immediately called, I called my husband, which he already knew. But what he did when my son couldn't get in touch with me, he started calling him. But he didn't want to call me at work. He started calling people because he wanted somebody to come get me to take me to the hospital. So I call him, and then next I call my best friend, and she was already en route he had already called her, but he couldn't say what was going on because my younger son was in the car. So I get to the hospital and I walk in and immediately, all I know is he was shot. I didn't know where, how, why, anything. So I walk into the hospital and it was like they were waiting for me. I go in Bayfront and they immediately pull me in this little room. And chaplain comes in and I said, why are you here? I've never been through something like this. And they said, we always come. And I'm like, okay, what's going on, my son? They said he's in surgery. That's all they said. So they take me upstairs to the surgery waiting room and they put me in a little small room. By this point, people start showing up at the hospital. And I said, I don't want anybody up here. I couldn't control how I was feeling at this moment. And having more people there was just going to cause more, confusion or just emotion. So I was in that room and the detectives are there and people's in and out. And I have no idea what is going on with him other than he had been shot. So, my other son, they were neighbors, and after my son was shot that morning, so what happened is there was a knock on the door, and my son had his best friend that he had been friends with since he was 12 sleeping on his couch. He answered the door, and a kid with a gun and a taser was at the door. These two boys, they thought Josh had money. Josh sold enough weed to supply his own little weed habit. It's fact. It's what it was. I mean, thought he had money. This kid gave me $150 a week to pay his. That's how much money he had. So they put the gun to Jamal's head and they went in. And when my son opened his bedroom door, he saw that gun to his friend's head and he immediately went for the gun. And so basically my son fought and the kid shot him until there was no more bullets. I didn't know everything at that moment, of course. So I get to the hospital. He's in surgery. We're in there, and then finally, I'd say, I don't know, I was there a couple hours. These doctors come in, and he just said, when Joshua got here, he was, he was like he was, and he had, and I felt like he was trying to ease my pain a little bit, want me to believe when he got there he wasn't suffering. And I just said, stop, he's gone. I said, my son is gone. I just hit that floor. I don't even remember what the doctor looked like. And I wasn't strong enough to ask questions, where was he shot or any of those things. My son had told me he was shot in the chest, so I knew that. But then when I found out actually what had happened, my son fought and he took a shot in the arm. It came out his arm, lodged in his back. He took a shot in his stomach. He took a shot that went in here and came out and fractured his ribs, which means he was on his knees. And then the last shot, he was shot in the back. When he had fell to the ground, the kid shot him in the back and he ran and he didn't take anything. My kid, every penny of my kid's money, he had $800 and it was in his wallet. He didn't take his PlayStation, he didn't take nothing. He shot him and he left. So within 12 hours, this kid is in jail. There's a driver who was in jail. Another kid never was put in jail. But, just that fast, all these lives are changed. In the beginning, the first day, I couldn't think about court. I couldn't think about anything. At that moment, I couldn't even believe what had just happened to me. This is, my life. He's gone. And then it didn't take long. And then I started the court case. And I was at every court hearing. And you're just so angry. For me, I haven't found forgiveness for the person who killed my son. Not that I was ever asked for forgiveness. You sit there. It was November 1st, made 3 years since my son's, 5 years. My bad. 5 years. 6 years. Jeez. Since my son's killer was found guilty, sentenced to life in prison. The driver is actually dead. He died in prison of a terminal illness at 26 or 27 years old. So it was 7 years you did in jail. Had you not drove him there, in a matter of seconds, so many lives are changed, and it's just hard. I mean, it's 9 years out and, the world keeps on moving. And sometimes you do feel like you're just alone and in a really bad spot,
You mentioned that these were young people, kids. What do you remember the ages?
Yeah, they were, yes, I do. The one kid who never went to jail, was 19 or 20, but the kid who killed my son had literally just turned 18 3 weeks earlier. I'll never forget that because during our court process, I had to go through motions to suppress. He was only 18 by an age, and they tried to make it like his IQ was low. It's like all these things to try to excuse what he did. And the driver was 20 years old.
The guns or gun that was used, were these legitimate guns? Were they stolen? Do you know anything?
So the guy who actually sold the gun, this kid lived in a triplex, and the kid that lived in one of the apartments, he was an airman, so he was like military. Well, he had this gun apparently, and he needed his transmission to his car fixed. So he sold the gun in his backyard, perfectly legal, for $120. And the kid said he was going to use it to do licks. He said that. And he sold it in the backyard, and it was completely legal. And those same boys is how the kid got caught, because that afternoon, evening, when he killed my son, he pulled up the phone and he's like, "You see this? I did that." Said, "Man, killed in home invasion." And they turned him in. So, yeah, but it was bought in the backyard, and that was completely illegal.
And what do you say to that? How do you feel to that when we look at, the ability to just sell a firearm without conducting any type of background check just because it's just because you want to unload it yourself?
I think it's crazy. I don't think it's right. I'm sorry, you can't buy a car without registering it. My husband explained to me, because he's a gun owner, he goes to Shoot Straight, he buys his gun, and his name's on file. But what happens after that? Nothing. And that doesn't make sense, because I'm taking the kid who sold this. He was I don't think he was a bad kid. Maybe he would have done something different if there was a law to make him do that. I don't know if he would have or would have not. But this case, he sold it in the backyard for a piece to his car, an alternate, whatever it was. And within 3 weeks, my son's dead. I would ask you to please be responsible gun owners. Don't leave your gun in your car when you're not in your car. I know a lot of people think when you try to put any kind of restrictions in order, you're trying to take their gun. But I'm not trying to take anybody's gun. I just want somebody else to not have to lose a child like I lost my child. I've had discussions with coworkers, and as simple as that. It's my car. I should be able to leave my gun in my car. I understand you should be able to leave your gun in your car or your gun in your house, but that's not the world we live in. Kids are getting a hold of these guns, and they're killing each other. And I just would ask, if you're a gun owner, to be responsible. And if you see something, say something. Because you don't want to live like this. You don't. You just don't. It's life-changing. First off, my son always had a beard, first off. So since he was 16 and he started growing his peach fuzz, he would have like a little goatee. So he got his first job and he had to shave his face. So we did family pictures, those pictures where you dress up. Well, my other son had just got a haircut, and he's like, "I'm not wearing this stupid hat, mess up my hair." So neither one of them did, and he has no facial hair here. This year is Josh's 20th birthday at the Cheesecake Factory. No matter how old he was, we always spent his birthday together. His 21st birthday, went to the improv comedy show. His 22nd birthday, his last birthday, we had it at the house, and unfortunately I don't remember. I know that it happened. I know what we had for dinner because I had a Facebook memory. There was no picture, but he was the kind of kid, he'd call me, his first heartbreak. He called me for everything. I was supposed to save the day, when he was hungry. He'd bring his laundry home. He's out on his own, he'd bring 6 loads to my house. So I started taking him to the laundromat to do his laundry because I was so mad he'd dump his laundry on me. So I started taking him to the laundromat. And sometimes I go, when I get back from my laundry, and I go do laundry at that same laundromat that we would do laundry at. And I think about how petty it was. I was angry about doing his laundry, because I was on his case for everything. I wanted him to be perfect. I wanted him, graduate high school, go to college, and just do things perfect. So I have a lot of regrets because I was so hard on him about everything. I tried to keep him straight. I caught him smoking weed when he was 14. I put him through a little 12-week, PAR thing, And then I think about it now, it's like, I was on his case about such petty stuff because I wanted him to just be perfect, you know. But we were close, and he just, no matter how hard I was on him, I was going to be the first person he called, and I know that day he would have called me. And I didn't get to, I sometimes think, like, what if I could have just got there and I could, like, pled with him to fight hard? I don't know, but I didn't. He was gone.
So what do you say to him now?
I mean, I love him, and I miss him, and I travel all the time, and I try to appreciate and still live my life. I know he would want me to do that. So I try to live life for both of us, but I'm sad a lot. So, but I'm sorry I was so hard on him, and like, geez, look how far the world's come. People are so like lax with everything. I know he looks at me and he's like, boy, my mom done chilled out a lot, boy. But I'd like to see him as a 31-year-old man. He was a 22-year-old kid. And what he would be doing now, how he would look, would he be a dad, just all of it. So, yeah, these holidays are really hard too. And the anniversary of his death just happened. And then today actually is 9 years since I had his funeral. This shouldn't even be a day, but I'm never going to forget that this is 9 years since I had his funeral. So, but it's don't prepare for it. One day you're at work, and then the next day you're sitting in a funeral home planning your child's funeral, and it's so itemized, and it's just like, how do you even get past that or through it? And they don't treat you real well when your kid is murdered. You're at the hospital. If you lose a loved one, like in natural causes, they let you stay there, process it. Not when your kid is murdered. It's like you're in the way. We just need to get them on to the medical examiner because now they're evidence. So it's just, you're not handled real right either with it all. But yeah, I was just, tell him I miss him, and I wish I would have realized how much I just never gave him credit for anything. I was always on him, and to realize how much he really did just want to make me happy. And that's what he would tell people, He told me one time, he's like, everything I do, I think of you first. And I'm like, well, then why do you still do it? Why do you still do it? But I had him when I was 16, so he was with me my whole life. He was like my motivation to just be a better person and to accomplish things and not have him live the life that I lived growing up. And it didn't matter. He still is dead for no reason. Kid didn't hate him. You didn't know his name. You didn't hate him. It makes no sense.